So I love body surfing. I love swimming out beyond the breakers, diving through the waves. I remember this girlfriend, she was really impressed with the way I was just so comfortable with the ocean that when a big wave would come, it didn't faze me, I'd just like dive right under it and throw it. And I like to swim out beyond the breakers and then start watching the waves as they come in, look for one that I want to ride. And then as it starts approaching me, the wave's coming like this and I'm here, I will just start paddling as fast as I can, catching the wave, feeling it swell underneath me as it comes to shore. And then the crest of the wave takes me and starts driving down. So I'm on the crest, and then the wave breaks, and it's just like, boom! You're just falling through space. It's like love, I think, where you feel like you're under the control of something greater than yourself, and you've been riding along at this peak or high, and then you just come crashing down, like falling through space. Love is like putting your foot out, and the step isn't where you thought it is, and you start falling, and you don't know where the support is. That's kind of like love. As you catch a great wave and you're falling through space as the wave breaks and crashes, and then bang, smack, you hit the bottom, and the wave just rockets you along the surface of the water to a brave new world. I love body surfing. So my mother was not much of a surfer. She was more the domestic type. She was raising us 3 kids. I'm the youngest of an older brother and sister, and my mother died of cancer before I turned 4. And this book is about all I have of her. It's called Fireside Stories. It's published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Gwen M. Ford. Kind of smells wholesome. And this is all I got left. She was dead before I was 4. So I want to read you part of one story. It's the first story in the book, because I sometimes find myself reading through this book like looking for messages for my life from my mother. I thought that she would have left me a letter or something to read when I turned 18, or left me a note or something, but she didn't. So all I've got is this book. So another mouth to feed, sighed the Chinese woman as she looked at her new baby daughter. This is from the story called One Ping the Unwanted. Why, I have a whole family of girls, so I don't want this one too. On the island of Taiwan in those days, people did not think girls were of much use. So this mother sold her little girl Wan Ping. Now, Wan Ping eventually finds her way to Christians who send her to nursing school. And Wan Ping marries a Christian evangelist. And together they live in the mountain country to help bring the gospel to the native people there. Because there's no doctor anywhere nearby, the people came from many miles to get medicine from Wan Ping. And this little girl that nobody wanted has become the nurse that everybody loves. End of story. So my father is a Seventh-day Adventist Bible scholar, evangelist. He chairs the religion department at Avondale College, which is a Seventh-day Adventist college 2 hours drive north of Sydney, and this is where I grew up. So Seventh-day Adventists have many rules. It's kind of a law-based religion. And as my father is a big shot in the church and a convert to Adventism, a very controversial theologian because he preaches righteousness by faith, which seems to many to go against the law-based foundation of the church. I think my father feels under great pressure to enforce the rules in his own home. So breaking the Sabbath, big sin, whack. Listening to the Beatles, big sin, whack. Eating between meals, big sin, whack. Sneaking candy, big sin, whack. Chewing gum, big sin. Swearing, big sin, whack. Drinking water with your meals, big sin. So as a child, I learned to tell lies to avoid getting hit by my parents. But when they inevitably discover my lies, they hit me harder and they add further punishments. So the punishments really began in a heavy way in 3rd grade, because during 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, while my classmates were out playing after school, I had to stay inside and read 40 pages each day of some dense work of Christian apologetics, like arguments for the truth of the Christian faith. And then I have to type a one-page summary. So I do that 6 days a week, every day of the week but the Sabbath. That's my assignment. So I learned all the arguments for Christianity. What I learned more than anything is how much I hate my parents, how much I hate this stupid religion. Like Christianity means to me having Christ's love shoved down my throat. It means treating everybody as fodder for Christ. You know, how many souls can we save? Christ, how I hate it. I just hate Christianity. I hate Jesus. I hate the New Testament. I hate spirituality. I hate turning my life over to God. I hate agape love. I hate forgiveness and faith and the cross and salvation, heaven. I hate it all, baby. So in 1980, when I am 14, my father, Desmond Ford, is thrown out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church's employment and out of the church's ministry for his controversial theological views. There's some dispute about whether or not Jesus moved from the holy to the most holy place in the heavenly sanctuary in 1844 to begin the final work of judging the 144,000 elect, the saints, as a preview to Jesus coming back to earth and taking care of the wicked and taking the righteous to heaven. So that's the dispute. My father said that nothing special happened in the heavenly sanctuary in 1844, which was essentially when the Seventh-day Adventist Church began. So he's essentially disagreed with the foundational teaching of the church. And he's kicked out of the church's employment. And for the first time in my life, I'm out in the world. Until then, I've always lived within the Seventh-day Adventist Church's community. So I hate it all. Because now I'm cut off from my friends. I'm cut off from the only community I've known. And Christ, how I hate the church, and maybe even my father too. And Dad now tells people that we belong to the invisible church of Jesus Christ. Great. So the invisible church of Jesus Christ does not have a big youth program. We're kind of out on our own now, living in Auburn, which is 45 minutes drive north of Sacramento, forming our own tiny Christian fellowship. My dad forms his own evangelical Christian non-denominational foundation called Good News Unlimited, goodnewsunlimited.org. Remember, we had this cool Christian party on a Saturday night, January 1, 1983. So I'm a junior at Placer High School, my first time at public school. And at this party, this blonde freshman girl comes. And she's kind of average-looking face, awesome body, pretty tight. And she comes with a chubby friend who I know from church and from my high school. And the three of us go up into the loft at Dr. Zane Kime's house. Dr. Zane Kime, the late Dr. Zane Kime, he brought my father to Auburn in 1980 after Dad was kicked out of the church's ministry. So up in the loft, and I must have been charismatic that time. There are times when I can just turn it on and I just start charming people and connecting, and I'm the life of the party. I think that was that night. Everything's clicking. I think it only takes about half an hour of conversation with this girl. Maybe it's an hour. And I kind of lean over and I kiss the blonde freshman girl. And I've only had one previous experience with French kissing, and that was in the newspaper room at my high school. And a girl on the staff kind of took me aside and like put her tongue right down my throat, and I'd never experienced that before. And I was so traumatized by the whole experience, I didn't talk to this girl for the rest of high school. So she was an editor on the paper. I was the editor-in-chief, but I told her if she had any questions, go to the newspaper advisor, faculty guy, not me. But now this freshman girl, she's amazing. So I think, I should be direct and forceful, but she like slows me down. And she has just like the sweetest lip gloss. I remember when I came to America at age 11, 1977, the girls were all using lip smacker, like strawberry lip smacker and other fruity lip smackers, and it just smelled so good. And I just imagined what it'd be like to kiss someone, whose lips were coated with lip smacker. So this girl has the sweetest lip gloss. She lets her kisses linger. She slows me down. She takes control. And she shows me the joy of gliding. She glides her lips over mine. She presses her lips to mine. And she starts sucking on my lips, one lip at a time. Then she gently explores the inside of my mouth with her tongue. She doesn't just stick it in. And I like that. I like being romanced. I just love the lingering feel of her lips gliding over mine. Glide, glide, glide. Suck, suck, suck. Gentle bite. Glide, glide, glide. Suck, suck, suck. And the tongue just kind of nips in and curls around my mouth, eventually meeting mine. She kind of lets me suck her tongue deep. And she comes out again and glides her lips over mine. And this is heaven. I am high. I am floating high above my problems. All I have to do is to follow her lead, and after about an hour of this kissing, I am a confident kisser for life. I have just been schooled by the best. And it's all been recreational kissing. We just dived into it. We didn't exchange letters. We didn't exchange feelings. We didn't court. We didn't date. We just dived into the kissing. I see her only a couple of times after this, and that is fine because I have what I need. I feel high as a kite. February 1988. I'm so ready to lose my virginity. I'm 21. I do 1,200 push-ups and 120 pull-ups every other day. I'm in awesome shape. I'm working 20, 30 hours a week in landscaping. I'm taking 24 units at Sierra Community College. I'm a straight A student. I've been accepted into UCLA to major in economics. And then, boom, I'm laid out with what feels like the flu. Only it doesn't go away. It feels very similar to the mononucleosis that I had 2 years previous, but that lasted only severely for a few weeks. This goes on month after month. I dragged myself off to UCLA in the fall of 1988, but I'm so sick that I can only finish one class per quarter. Everyone on my dorm floor whispers that there's some psychological problems all in my head. The doctors aren't able to diagnose me for a full year. Finally, I get, in the spring of 1989, the diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome. And it's such a relief to have a name for what's ailing me, to know there are other people with the same problem and that people are working on this disease. My world has fallen apart here. At this point, I've rejected Christianity, I've rejected God, I've rejected religion. My whole meaning in life until now has been based on accomplishment, but now I can't accomplish anything because I'm so sick. I feel, well, what the hell, I might as well lose my virginity. And I do to this little 4'10" Chinese girl. And she becomes my girlfriend for the rest of my year at UCLA. We get together the week of Valentine's Day in 1989. So I'm 22 when I finally lose my virginity. But the girl I want to tell you about is my fantasy girl. She's also on my dorm floor. It's a special quiet floor, the second floor at Reber Hall. And she's Korean, and she's Christian. So at this point, I tell people I'm an atheistic communist. She's a Christian. She's a member of the faith that oppressed me throughout my childhood, that spanked me and whacked me and whipped me and beat me, knocked the hell out of me, the faith that wouldn't let me eat candy, wouldn't let me eat between meals, wouldn't let me eat at night. 2 meals a day was the Seventh-day Adventist ideal. No water with your meals because that slows your digestion. No movies, no TV, no plays and theater and drama. No listening to pop music, no listening to the Beatles. Those are all sins. The faith of my father and my mother and my cold, frightening home racked with hatred and arguments. The faith that kicked my father out, my family out, and exiled us from our community and our friends. Korean girl is a Christian. She's really sweet and shy and retiring, and when she smiles, her eyes disappear into slants. But her best quality is her rack. Full D cup, natural D cup. When I flirt with her, she very sensibly points out, "You have a girlfriend." Many times when I'm having sex with my atheist A-cupped girlfriend, I imagine that I'm with the Korean. I fear it will never happen, but a man can dream, can't he? That voluptuousness, that snugness, that innocence, that Christianity, I want in. I come from Christianity, and I desperately want to fuck Christianity. I want to stick it to Christianity, to get right up inside of it, to move around in all that sticky pink goodness, to get off on God and get something good out of my upbringing, to go home to a paradise lost, to Pacific Union College, where I spent many of my happiest years from 1977 to 1982, Seventh-day Adventist school in the Napa Valley. I want to be accepted and embraced and brought to orgasm by the community that booted me. When chronic fatigue syndrome finally forces me to leave UCLA in June of 1989, I move home with my parents, discouraged, depressed. Eventually I embrace Orthodox Judaism. I grow a beard. I wear a yarmulke around the house. I wear tzitzit, the fringes. I answer the phone, shalom. Yeah, I was in pain. And my faith in God, my newfound religion, and my fantasies about the Korean keep me going through these tough times. I write to her a couple of times a year, and she writes me back maybe once a year. I become really religious. I'm all about God now, all about Torah, turning my life around. No more porn, no more sex, no more masturbation. I go 14 months without masturbation. I refuse to shake hands with women. It's an Orthodox Jewish custom. I'm going to be so holy now. I'm going to be holier than Dennis Prager, my hero, Jewish theologian and talk show host on KBC Radio, who first turned me on to Judaism. Living on 7 acres alone with my parents out in the country, 45 minutes drive north of Sacramento, I feel so lonely and lost and helpless. I developed this conviction as the years roll by and life is just passing me by. I figure I will never get well in my parents' home. They know lots of doctors. I've seen many doctors, but none of them have done me much good. As the years roll by, I develop the conviction that there are answers out in the wider world to my problems, and I just have to connect. And I know from previous experience that I am mesmerizing to about 1% of the population. So I place and answer tons of singles ads, hoping to meet that 1 in 100 who can be mesmerized by me and want to help me, and want to rescue me. So I'm 27 years old now. It's 1993. It's June. And I meet this 20-year-old Jewish girl with E-cup breasts, full rack. She's only 5 foot tall. And before such abundance, my resolve just weakens, and I'm pluking her constantly and just riding that wave of passion. She'll come up to visit me on weekends, and she always leaves drained because I'm just so needy. I'm just riding the wave. I'm riding her. I love riding women. And this is important because she's just the second woman that I've ever been with. Like when you've only been with one, there's something really special to sex. Once you go beyond one, then it can very easily become an addictive high. Seduction can become addictive. And it's not so special. Like when you're just with one, I don't know, there's a big, big difference between 1 and 2. Because once you've been with a second, then you have more experiences, and you can see how some people are good at this and have this. And for me, it was very significant going from 1 to 2 lovers. And at the same time, I'm pluking the E-cup. I'm talking every day on the phone to Pammy, this woman who's about 11 years older than me and lives in Orlando. And she owns her own home. She has a great psychiatrist. And I feel like this woman can really turn my life around. Eventually, I'll leave the E-cup, move to Orlando, move in with Pammy. She takes me to meet a psychiatrist. He gives me a prescription that turns my life around. And it never would have happened if I hadn't connected through those singles ads and fucked my way to freedom. Now I'm on my 3rd lover. It's really intoxicating. I love riding that wave, riding a woman to shore. Lots of good things happen. You can just catch that wave at the right time and then just ride it. So I'm on this new medication. According to Wikipedia, my medication Nardil is used primarily in the treatment of major depressive disorder, dysthymia, which means low-grade depression, bipolar depression, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, bulimia, and post-traumatic stress disorder. So praise be to God and to Nardil, I'm now back to 2/3 of normal because I reached out and connected, doing the thing I do best, sex. I'm a great kisser by now. I'm a confident kisser. In Tampa Bay, in January of 1994, I meet my hero, Jewish theologian Dennis Prager. He says that if I move to LA, he might have work for me. So I moved to LA in March of 1994. I want to do my bit for ethical monotheism. That's Dennis Prager's crusade. One God with one ethical demand for all of humanity. One God, his primary demand is that we treat other people ethically. This is what I'm passionate about now. I see Judaism as embodying ethical monotheism. So I'm in God's army, I'm converting to Judaism, onward Jewish soldiers marching us to war. I have a friend's place in Westwood, and one day the Korean, my fantasy girl, comes to visit me. And I feel as triumphant as Douglas MacArthur returning to the Philippines, because I have overcome my illness. All those people in the dorm who whispered about me, said it was all in my head. Well, I proved them wrong. I'm back. I'm a warrior. I returned home for my prize. So the Korean girl is not as hot as she was at 18, but she is still my dream girl. All my life I've longed for a hot girl, a foxy chick. They've always turned me down, till now. So we sit outside on the deck, just talking with the Korean, and the sun's shining on us. I feel like I'm catching the wave at just the right time. And I turn the conversation to sex, and glory be. The Korean looks over at me, she leans into me, and she kisses me. I kiss her back. I gather her in my arms. I walk her to the bedroom. I take off her clothes, and all of God's glory is just laid out before me on the bed. Everything seems possible. I can resume a grand life, even better life than I had before illness, because I finally have those magnificent breasts in my hand. My lips are all over them, and I'm sucking on her. All those hot girls I never got to fuck. Ha. Ha. She says she's a virgin, which only makes her all the more exciting to me. Now, when it comes time for the ultimate deed to slide in and really stick it to Christ, something's not right. It's not going in. And I huff and I puff and I force my way in, and it's awful. It's just like the worst sex of my life. And I look in her eyes as I'm banging away, and I can see it's doing nothing for her. Sex has always been smooth and silky and pleasurable for me. I've been with 10 girls by this time in my life. I've caught that wave many a time. I'm addicted to the high of seduction, the cresting of the wave as it crashes down and carries you to shore. Meet a good woman, and you ride her, and she can just carry you for days and weeks. I'm addicted to the high of seduction now, to the different tastes and textures of women, to the different ways that they squeeze me and bring me pleasure and climax. This is not smooth, this is not silky, this is not pleasure. Yes, she consents. She lets me do what I want. But none of my techniques are working on her. I'm bringing her no pleasure. Like, I take my satisfaction anyway, but I feel horrible. You keep doing it over the next week, and it just doesn't get any better. I think this is what I've been fantasizing about for all these years. I'm sure the Torah has something to say about this. And after a string of these coital failures, I kind of give up, and I tell her, you'll have other lovers, and it'll be better for you. I feel like a complete failure. We do talk a lot, though never about the failure of our sex life. And I tell her I've been fantasizing about her since the day we met, and she is confused. Because how could I feel that way when I have a girlfriend? And I tell her that the heart has reasons of its own that the head can never understand. she shares her fantasies with me. She's never seen a guy pee, and she's dying to do it. I promise her that I'll show her, but somehow I never get around to it. So one night, in the midst of this, my former girlfriend from UCLA comes over with a bag of potatoes, and women are always doing these thoughtful little gestures. And this is the girl who took my virginity. And it doesn't take much effort to get her into bed, and the sex is great. The sex is very good, and I kind of see the virtue of monogamy, consistency, and safety. After we have sex, she asks me, "How many girls have you been with since me?" I say, "About 10. "How many guys have you been with since me?" She says, "1. And she says, "Those other girls, they taught you well. You used to be really awkward." I feel great. I've come of age. I am not awkward anymore. I am smooth. I am a man. I'm creating my own life, away from my parents, away from the church, joining a new religion. I can ride the wave. I can ride women now. I'm not afraid anymore. I can take what I want. I'm not emotionally crippled. I'm combining Judaism with hedonism. I'm taking my values out of the dusty shul and into the bright, shiny world. I'm offering ethical monotheism and enlightened pleasure to all who will listen and participate. Of the Master's touch, I imagine that I'm like Guru Luke or Dr. Ford or Rabbi Levi. I'm having the best of both worlds, the religious and the secular, the best of my parents' world, the best of Dennis Prager's world, and I'm combining these worlds with the best of the hot young stuff from UCLA. Next day, the Korean comes over, we spend the night, and in the morning while I'm shaving, I think about how easily I could fulfill her fantasy, because she's sitting on the bed looking at me, and all I have to do is take a leak in front of her. And she asks me, "What are we?" I keep shaving. And I say, "Well, we're daytime friends and nighttime lovers." "Have there been other lovers?" she asks. "Yes," I say. She's silent. She leaves soon after. Next time she comes over, she says she can't see me anymore, and I've never seen her again. As the years go by, many times I kick myself for telling her the truth about my infidelity, and thus losing access to her body and to her soul, to her sweetness and to her light, and to the best antidote to my darkness within. Many years pass by since that spring of 1994, and I Google her name and email her, and she makes a short reply, kind of mystified why I'd want to contact her. I write back to her, but she doesn't answer. A few more years pass, I email her again. I want to make things right. I want to apologize. I want to have sex with her again and again until it's good. She does not reply. According to Google, she is never married. I wonder if she's ever seen a guy pee. So after much wandering in the world, I don't really feel strong enough to return to UCLA to finish my economics degree, and finally find my niche working from home and blogging about the porn industry. I published some books, including my magnum opus in 1999, A History of X, 100 Years of Sex in Film. There's no fireside stories. So I'm written about in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, as a seminal blogger, one of the first bloggers to make a living at it. I make my living from blogging from 1997 on till 2007. I'm featured on E! True Hollywood Story, on Entertainment Tonight, on 60 Minutes, on Hustler Magazine's Asshole of the Month, for the way I criticize their precious industry. My notoriety, however, causes my family great shame. In year 2000, they offered me a free trip back to Australia for a month if I will consult with the doctors of their choice. I say yes. I spend 3 hours with the psychiatrist. He comes back to my family with the following. Luke has a personality disorder of the histrionic narcissistic type. Luke is very dependent upon other people for his identity as a person. He has poor identity integration and poor self-esteem. Luke is always looking for mirroring. It's called narcissistic supply. That is to say, Luke is always looking for external validation of himself as a person. He needs other people to tell him who he is. However, because it's not possible for people to mirror him all the time, he gets disappointed, and this can turn to envy. Luke may not be conscious of the fact that he is very envious of his family, as they seem to have things he would like to have but does not have. This leads to him fluctuating between, on the one hand, devaluing people such as his family, putting them down, and on the other hand, idealization of people such as Dennis Prager. Luke tends to make unreasonable demands of people who are eventually driven to setting limits on him. Luke takes this very badly. Luke needs 5 to 10 years of insight orientation psychotherapy. There's a falling out with Dennis Prager which caused him to go to therapy. While Luke has a lot of therapy speak, he may not really understand the concepts involved. Luke's therapist did well to keep him in therapy for 15 months. That is unusual for someone with Luke's condition. Such people often leave off therapy when it becomes too confronting. Luke will not continue therapy that is confrontational, particularly in the early stages. Luke will continue to do what he is doing to satisfy his needs until such times as the rewards, reinforcement, are outweighed by the negative effects of same punishment. And he may do something about getting his life on track, getting therapy or going back to finish his degree, which would give him some self-esteem. The negative effects of his current behavior are that no one will have a long-term relationship with him, as no matter how sane they are, people cannot live without getting something back. Luke is always taking in without giving anything back. Second, any decent woman who looked at his website would immediately be repulsed. Luke has a complicated personality, his mood instability. Luke becomes very focused on one thing, and when he is not getting the desired rewards, he drops it and moves on. Luke may have had some post-viral illness, but then the illness took on a life of its own. It is common for people to retreat into the sick role because it is a way of failing in a face-saving way. Luke was failing because of the lack of significant relationships in his life. Luke in his current state would not be successful in employment. Luke wants immediate results, and if he does not get them, then he does not want a bar of it. Luke is capable of being exploitive. Luke has poor sense of identity. He is not well integrated. He has no sense of self. Therefore, he is very changeable in different circumstances. When I got a copy of this, I put it on my blog. People loved it. Immediately recognized the truth of what the psychiatrist had written. I needed to get help. I went back to therapy for a couple of years. When I couldn't afford it anymore, I quit. After my 5th synagogue ejection in the fall of 2008, I think I really hit rock bottom. Being at B'nai David, Judea for 7 years, my rabbi kind of gave up on me because my blogging was just needlessly cruel. He said that I just didn't get the type of decent behavior that Judaism demands. I had a choice to let him be the editor of my blog, to close my current blog, start something new, or leave the shul. And I left. That I couldn't make the relationship with my rabbi and with my synagogue work just devastated me. The rabbi had stuck his neck out for me when many of his peers said, get rid of him, get rid of Luke Ford. I'd let him down, and he just got so tired of dealing with me. What was it? The psychiatrist said that Luke tends to make unreasonable demands of people who are eventually driven to setting limits on him, and Luke takes this very badly. So on Yom Kippur 2008, I tell a friend who's had many years of therapy that I need to go back to therapy, but I can't afford it. And he tips me off to this low-cost therapy center where I'm able to go for like $25 a session. Start going every week. About 2.5 years in, as I'm describing my sexual fantasies to my therapist, he says, that sounds like eroticized rage. Eroticized rage. I've never even heard of the term, but as soon as I do, it rings true for me. My therapist explains that eroticized rage relates to sexual intercourse, but also to how you treat women, how you get them into bed, how you manipulate them, Doesn't have to be a reaction to the mother figure, but it most often is. Men who are sexually compulsive, use women and throw them away, often feel squashed by their mothers. They felt powerless, and this is how they get even. Yes, get even. A phrase speaks to me because whenever I find some prim, proper, haughty woman and have sex with her, I feel like finally I'm even with life, that we're quits. I've often played a game with my girlfriends to have them tell me during sex, no, you're hurting me, you're too big. I want to feel transgressive. My favorite form of sex has always been something wicked, this way comes, and it makes my girlfriends uncomfortable. It's precisely what makes it erotic for me. I recognized the rage as soon as my therapist mentioned it. If you take a kid with an absent father, a mother who confides too much in him, and the kid is forced too early to be the man of the house, to have all this stuff dumped on him that he can't handle, or women become terrifying, a whirlpool of endless emotional need. That's how I kind of grew up regarding women because of my relationship with my stepmother. I was overwhelmed and developed this rage at women. So, of the verdict, eroticized rage. I remember hurrying home before the Sabbath. It's a Friday afternoon. I Google eroticized rage, and I find this essay by sex addiction pioneer Patrick Carnes, a psychologist, and he writes that perversion is the erotic form of hatred. It is sexual behavior that breaks the rules. Social disapproval, judgment, and shame are key to arousal taking place. Eroticized rage is being used as a term to describe the anger that is underneath sexual behavior that is socially unacceptable. This scale strongly taps into a sexual fantasy life that is very opportunistic. The behaviors described are all predatory at some level. The patient may never act on these fantasies due to social inhibitions or lack of opportunity. More than likely, the effective underpinnings may manifest in other more acceptable behaviors. So, my eroticized rage had never led me to criminal behavior. Never led me to the unethical forms of behavior. All my relationships have been completely consensual. Never had a relationship with a married woman. But we all have this arousal template. And much of it's genetic. Much of it comes from life experience. Without much choice, we all tended to be handed a roadmap to what excites us. You can call it a love map. And we tend to act it out unconsciously without therapy. So men are not the only ones with eroticized rage. There are women in esteemed positions in society who can only get off if the scenario is perverse. They too have eroticized rage. Like take the squeaky clean politician. His wife might give blowjobs to strippers because she's acting out her eroticized rage at her husband. So now I finally have a name for what ails me and I have a roadmap for getting well. It's called 12-step work for sex addiction. So this is now the spring of 2011. I realize I need to remake my love map. That anger, hatred, revenge are the great mixture for creating intensity but not for creating intimacy. My love life has tended to be much more about intensity than intimacy. The stuff that I can't reconcile in real life, I've been working out through my rage-filled fantasies. I see that my lack of connection in life, that I've tried to fix through rage and fantasy, through imagining that I'm a big shot, it's just not working. My emotional addictions enabled me to survive my childhood, but now they're making my life worse, even when I'm not acting out. Because a dry drunk is still a drunk, still filled with resentment and fear, cut off from his best self, cut off from God, cut off from other people. And a chaste sex addict, still a sex addict, still filled with resentment and fear and cut off from his best self. So I'm a chaste sex addict at this point. By 2011, I stopped having sex, stopped looking at porn, but still filled with that resentment and fear that drives addiction. I've long had this fear that if I pursue what I want more than anything, which is sex with beautiful women, this will destroy me. So I've always tried to keep the brakes on my most powerful drive, but the engine inside me keeps pushing me towards that cliff, and I keep jamming on the brakes as hard as I can, and pulling on the handbrake and trying to battle the car to a stop, but the cliff keeps getting closer and closer, and I don't want to go over the cliff. Now is the time to go under the hood and to fix the engine so it stops driving me to destruction. So I realized that eroticized rage is a sign of sex addiction. I Google the topic. I find these questions of self-diagnosis. Do you get high from sex and or romance? Yeah. Feel that your life is unmanageable because of your excessive dependency needs? Yeah. Very needy in my relationships, very clingy. Have you ever thought that there might be more you could do with your life if you're not so driven by sex and romantic pursuits? Yeah. So I go to my first sex addiction meeting. And someone hands me a reading on the characteristics of sex addiction, and when called upon, I read the characteristics, no big deal. As the meeting progresses, I notice that when everyone else reads, they first introduce themselves by their first name and then state the nature of their addiction. So I want to feel included. From now on, I say, "Hi, I'm Luke, I'm a sex addict." More times that I say I'm addicted to sex, the more I believe it. I remember in my first meeting, the lead speaker sharing his story of these cyclical problems in his relationships, and who would start out great and then they'd fall apart, and they seemed to have the same pattern over and over again, and he always thought the problem was with his partners, and I identify with this. Identify with many of the other sharers in the room, and when my turn comes, I open up and I speak for 3 minutes about what's led me to this room. After the meeting, a guy with a very similar story to mine comes up to me. He's also a Seventh-day Adventist preacher's kid. He's like a great guy. He's blunt, he's funny, no BS, no pieties. He also loves the porn. I feel at home here in my first meeting. Like, us addicts need to be with fellow addicts. We can't feel safe talking about this stuff with people who aren't fellow addicts. And I'm standing there talking to these people, including the main speaker, after the meeting, and confessing, look, I'm a sucker for self-help. I'm always looking for transformation. Keep taking up things to change myself. Never works. And the speaker tells me 12 steps isn't about self-help. It's about transcending the self. The answer is in service. I found that my first time in a 12-step meeting was far less daunting than my first time in yoga, far less daunting than my first time in a synagogue. 12-step programs welcome converts. Judaism doesn't seek converts. And I keep coming back to the meetings because the meetings make me feel sober. That's how I know that I'm an addict, because when I emerge from the meetings, I feel sober. I don't feel as predatory and cruel. I'm used to going through life thinking about the women I want to have sex with. All other women are irrelevant to me. There's just the hotties that I want to get with. Now I'm experiencing long stretches of sobriety where my mind clears up to think about other things. I'm able to relate more calmly to myself and to other people. And I don't keep sticking sex into conversations where it doesn't belong. So through going to my program, I learned there's nothing to be ashamed of in being a sex and love addict when your basic needs aren't met as a child. You develop fantasies that someone will come along who will take care of you, and as you grow older, you find things that are intoxicating, that are more reliable than any of the adults in your life to take care of you. You can turn to these things, these substances or processes for comfort and meet your needs. I learned that sex and love addiction is not really my problem. It's just a mask. It's a symptom. It's a distraction from my problem. At my core, I have an intimacy disorder. I learned that addiction is a doorway into destruction or enlightenment. Your choice. Once you recognize that you have an addiction, you can turn your life around. So when I feel love, romantic love, the chemistry in my body changes and I get a high, and it's so delicious that all my pain goes away. I realize I kind of spent my life chasing this high. All of my romantic obsessions over the course of my life probably being with fellow sex and love addicts, people more interested in fantasy than the real thing. And like the greatest relationships in my life, they weren't so great because we'd break up half a dozen times. We were always breaking up, getting back together again, and spiraling down. All the things that I want my love to give to me, I can learn to give them to myself. When I'm hungry, I can feed myself. I can cook for myself. I can practice self-care. When I'm cold, I can put on a jacket. I can close a window. When I'm tired, I can rest. When I'm lonely, I can seek out company. So going to meetings helps me to feel better and to understand things more clearly. But it's not until I start working the 12 steps that I think I really get better. There was this day in June of 2012. I'm sitting in Starbucks with my book from the program. And I'm working step 4, taking a complete and fearless moral inventory. And I read one sentence, it just strikes me cold. As we looked at our current lives and at our past, we saw that virtually everything we did and everyone we knew was exploited to meet our addictive needs. No single sentence has ever so changed the way that I look at my life. I read that and I immediately knew it was true. Despite my changes of religion and profession and geography, despite all the psychiatry and medications and therapy and yoga and Alexander technique, my tendency to use people to meet my addictive needs was entirely unchanged. All my enthusiasms, my ethical monotheism, my yoga, couldn't shift my addictions. So I started looking at everybody and everything that I resented in my life. And I started listing them out, working horizontally. First column, the name of the person and the place of the thing that I resent. Second column, what they've done to me. So that already narrows it. It's not the entirety of the person or the place. It's what they did. Third column, I lift out the part of my life that they threatened, such as my self-esteem, my social standing, my livelihood, my sex life. Fourth column is the lightning strike. That's where I list out the role that I played. I didn't always create all these life-threatening interactions, but many of them I did play a big role. And I keep seeing in case after case how I have stepped on other people's toes in my pursuit of my needs, and they reacted to me. So the next 8 steps, the 12 steps, they pretty much follow. You learn to put out of your mind what others have done to you and ascribe that to their own spiritual sickness, and you give that up to God. And where you have hurt people, you make amends. You give to God your fears and your resentments. And you turn off your resentment replay machine, where every time you replay something, you become a little more innocent, the other person becomes a little more guilty. So through working these steps, I currently have no conscious resentment against anybody for what they've done to me. Now, when people cut me off in traffic or step on my toes in life, my rage will still come out at times, but I'm able to let it go much more quickly than ever before. No longer use my resentment replay machine. Haven't looked at porn in years. Haven't masturbated in 6 months. Haven't used women in years. As I go about my life, I find I'm no longer storing up these erotic rage scenarios because I can't use them anymore because I don't masturbate. There are 2 main questions that I ask myself these days, and they keep me doing this work. How free do I want to be? How real do I want God to be in my life?